Good morning, friends. Yesterday I was discussing about the so-called behavioralism. In the behavioralism, I said why behavioralism has arisen. Let me quickly go through this behavioralism concept. Uh, I think there are two persons who are very new today, Yamuna and Rukmini. So let me quickly go through what I have discussed yesterday. See, I was discussing the so-called approaches, the first unit of section A, paper 1. This is theories of political science, first unit of section A, paper 1. Right. In this, there are approaches to political science. In that approaches, there are two approaches, majorly traditional approach and modern approaches. In the traditional approach, there are four approaches again. One approach is the so-called philosophical approach. Second one is historical approach. The third approach is legal constitutional approach. The fourth one is empirical approach. So what is empirical approach? Empirical approach I discussed day before yesterday. Empirical approach is something which is related with facts, right? And then empirical approach has given rise to one more analysis in political science, that is scientific approach. Now, what is the difference between empirical approach and scientific approach? Whenever we use the term scientific, it means that it follows some rigorous methodology adapted by pure science. What is pure science? Science which can be tested in the laboratories, right? As it is adapting a rigorous new methodology, this scientific approach is known as modern approach, or also known as behavioral approach. So behavioral approach is also known as scientific approach. Now I have given what is the meaning of it. Behavioral approach or behavioral movement is to introduce scientific methods in political science. Whenever you are using scientific methods, which means the methodology that is applied in the subject is going to change. As the methodology is going to change, right, it is going to give new methods to study this political science. As new methods are coming up in political science, the scope of the discipline enlarges. The assumptions about politics, of the about assumptions about the so-called nature of the human state, it is going to change. As a result, behavioral approach is also known as revolutionary approach. Next, I discussed about why behavioral approach. I have said this clearly because there was one thing called decline in the political science by First World War and Second World War. The major regions of this political science decline is the political scientists were stuck in philosophical approach or historical approach, but they failed to understand why there is one concept called wars are occurring. They didn't have the answer for these wars. As a result, First World War has occurred, but within 20 years, Second World War has occurred. As a result, political scientists couldn't answer why this is happening. Now, American Political Science Association thought we have to steer our political science from the so-called normative approaches to the scientific approaches. Now, in that there is one person called David Easton who said that political theory is in decline. Robert Dahl said that political theory is dead. So these are the two persons who has said these two versions. As a result, what happened over a period of time? Historians, why they said that political theory is in decline? Because political science was seen from the lens of history and from the lens of tradition, that is called philosophy. Hence, David Easton, Robert Dahl criticized Sabine and Dunning. Sabine and Dunning, I discussed them in historical approach. So they said that Sabine and Dunning are reasons for the decline of political science because they have stuck political science in history. As a result, they were stuck in their old theories and not dealt with new theories. As a result, that was there. Now, the second reason for the rise of behavioral approach is not only the decline of the subject, but after the Second World War, in order to ensure that there is no world wars taking place again, all the scientists of America has met at a place called in America for academic conference. For this academic conference, all the scholars were called except political scientists. Political scientists were not invited for this because they said that neither political scientist facts are reliable not they are verifiable, but they are giving old methodologies. As a result, better not to call them. They called all the other people, different spheres or different disciplines were invited because they refined their ideology by this point of time. They went for social methods by this time. They went for scientific methods by this time. Hence, their facts were reliable, their data is verifiable, and their theory is verifiable. As a result of this, all these things, we got very upset. As a result, our people thought that we have to go ahead and start a new discipline in political science. There is one Chicago school of scholars such as Catlin Laswell. Catlin and Lackwell said that study politics as a process and not as a static part. Study politics as a process and not as a static part. And James Bruce said politics should be regarding with facts, facts and facts. Based on all these factors, behavioralism approached over a period of time, and this was proposed by the David Weister in his speech to American Political Science Association, and he has given 8 intellectual foundation stones of behavioralism in this. The 8 intellectual behavioral stones are regularity, systematization, verification, technicalities, measurement, integration, value neutrality, pure science. All these 8 concepts were added, and then behavioralism started growing. Now, I said, what is the utility of behavioralism? Behavioralism utility is this was very much useful in understanding how the electoral behavior is there in order to ensure that behavior political science is helping in the electoral discipline. It was highly useful. However, by 1960, again, behavioralism was criticized. This is what we discussed. Why it was criticized? Because now the behavioralists, they have reduced this to, the discipline is reduced to behavioralism, or that it is reduced to electoral behavior. As a result, our scientists were very upset again because the scope of the discipline has been compromised and it was limited. Hence, they went for new approach that is called post-behavioralism. Today I am going to discuss that post-behavioralism. What are the components of this post-behavioralism? One second. Now, let me continue to post-behavioralism. This is what we discussed in my last class. Those who are very new to the present day class, please go through all the topics that I have covered until today. Then you will get the link. Because this today what I am going to discuss, it is the last chapter, a last part of chapter 1. So we have come to ending of chapter 1, right? So better to go all through that, then you'll understand what it is. Otherwise, it appears to be Chinese language, right? Now, we are going to discuss, or I am going to discuss the so-called post-behavioralism. Now, why post-behavioralism? The first question is, why post-behavioralism? The reason for coming into this post-behavioralism is one. The reason is this. One, behavioralism started compromising the subject of political science. Political science subject was compromised. In what way it was compromised? The discipline of political science was now restricted to understand the electoral behavior itself. Hence, the entire subject of politics was reduced to elections and manner of election theories. Because of this, the scope or the relevance of the subject started confining to elections. But on day one, I said the scope of political science is bit large, right? It includes state, understanding the state, it includes understanding the politics, it includes understanding the human nature, it includes understanding the elements of the state altogether. But now, rather than studying all this, because of your facts are said by Bruce, they people started focusing on facts. As a result, they didn't understand the real circumstances existed in the world. Real circumstances. They failed to understand what is going on in the reality. That is, in the real life, what it is happening. There is civil war which is going on in America between the whites and blacks by this point of time. Now they fail to analyze why this is happening. Now, if you look at the debate between whites and blacks, this is something which is related to the values of human beings. Values of human beings. It is related to something about human nature, such as people showing prejudice, people showing stereotypes, right? In order to understand these things, what it required is if you are just depending on facts rather than the values, then it is going to compromise on these things. As a result, this is something which is related to the values. Hence, as behavioralism said that clearly, you keep your values aside political science. That is one thing that I discussed. Value neutrality is one concept of behavioralism. As behavioralism is saying that you should keep your values aside. Hence, the so-called behavioralism lost relevance by 1960. Hence, post-behavioralism emerged. Post-behavioralism emerged. Now, I said this in this context. So by 1960, behavioralism was in decline or political science was again in decline. Look at this. Political science started having some stable background until medieval Indian history. By the end of the First World War, political science slowly started declining. By the end of the Second World War, it reached the bottom, it lost its relevance, and then behavioralism started regaining the subject. Again, in 1960s, it declined. As a result, again, it started emerging of because of postmodernism, post-behavioralism. This is how the evolution of political science as a subject has started. From First World War to Second World War or post Second World War, subject decline. After post Second World War, because of the behavioralism, it started rising because of behavioralism. However, because of value free, it started declining because it failed to understand the 1960s, the wars which were happening, domestic violence which was happening in America. As a result, post behavioralism started again gaining traction. Now, we are discussing about these components. We have discussed the rest of the story, the last leg that is called post behavioralism. Now, David Easton himself has said that it is impossible for political scientists to apply scientific techniques. So, first he said that you have to apply scientific techniques, but now he understood that it is very impossible for political scientists to apply scientific techniques unlike the pure sciences. In pure science, like physics, biology, chemistry, you can apply scientific techniques, but in political science, you cannot apply the so called scientific techniques. The reason is, he said simple, the reason is political science is an applied science. You can apply it and you can see it, not a mere science, not a mere science. As a result, this is going to fail and it is losing its relevance. So, the major reasons are one, behavioralism compromised political science and the scope of the subject was reduced, the scope of the discipline was reduced to the so called electoral behavior. As a result, this is one reason for the rise of so called post behavioralism. Now, the second thing is David Easton himself has said that again in his political speech to American Political Science Association, he has brought out post behavioralism and He has presented a lecture. His lecture was titled, I said already, Credo of Relevance. Credo of Relevance. Creativity which will be having relevance. This is what his title was. Now, why he has titled this? He has titled this Credo of Relevance. He has titled this saying that whatever the political scientists are there, he criticized the behavioralists again, saying that political scientists or political theorists are sitting in ivory towers, are sitting in ivory towers, are sitting in ivory towers, performing or perfecting their techniques, perfecting their techniques. Why they were sitting in ivory towers? Because pure science people, physics, biology, chemistry people, they sit in laboratory to test their results or to test their facts. Similarly, the political scientists started sitting in ivory towers like laboratories, perfecting their techniques. Because it is focusing on techniques, so they were sitting and were perfecting their techniques. As they were perfecting their techniques, they compromised on subject matter. Subject matter. What is the subject matter? Political science was relegated back to only elections, but not to the rest of the things. So they compromised on subject matter, and the relevance of political science is lost again. And the relevance of political sciences lost again. Hence, he called that you should ensure that studying of political science will have the subject matter intact and it will be relevant. Hence, he has said credo of relevance. Credo of relevance. Credo of relevance means give credit to the relevance in the subject. Give credit to the relevance in the subject. And in this, he called for one theory known as creative theory. He called for one theory known as creative theory. What is this creative theory? In creative theory, he clearly said that political scientists are to be guided by actions as well as relevance. Your actions has to be relevant to the contemporary times rather than restricting it to facts. That is the first thing that he has said. Now, what are the components or why? What are the other things this David Easton has said? He said that techniques are important. Techniques are important, but at the same time, purpose for which the techniques are applied is equally important. Purpose for which techniques are applied are equally important. What does this mean? You are collecting the facts. Behavioralists are collecting the facts. But why they are collecting the facts? Just to understand the elections. But the purpose of political science is not just to understand the elections, but to say why or what is state and how it is being organized. This is the basic purpose of political science, right? So, in the quest for the techniques, they lost the purpose. Hence, he said that techniques are important, but the purpose for which techniques is employed is more important or equally important. It is more important. Purpose is more important. This is first thing what he said in his speech. The second thing that he has said is you cannot compromise relevance of the subject. The relevance of the subject cannot be compromised in quest for purity of techniques. టెక్నిక్స్ పైన కాన్సన్ట్రేట్ చేసి సబ్జెక్ట్ని మాత్రం ఇర్రిలవెంట్ చేయడం వ్యర్థం అనేసి అంటున్నాడు ఈయన. డోంట్ మేక్ ద సబ్జెక్ట్ ఇర్రిలవెన్స్ బై ఫోకసింగ్ ఆన్ ప్యూరిటీ ఆఫ్ టెక్నిక్స్. And he clearly understood that political science is an applied science not a pure science. Unlike unlike pure sciences, political science is applied science. You have to come to the society, you have to apply it to the real day life, and you have to know how far political science is relevant. Then only political science relevance is upheld. So this is called credo of relevance. And he has said one more thing, that is called political scientists is having bigger responsibility rather than natural scientists. They have bigger responsibility. What is their responsibility? They have bigger responsibility than natural scientists. The bigger responsibility is they need not concern about these natural scientists need not consider about what is right, what is wrong. But social scientists have to consider what is right or what is wrong, and they have to guide the entire society. They have this objective. Entire society should be guided by them. But pure sciences, they never bother about what is right or wrong. Rather, they are bothered about facts and how they are working. But political scientists' responsibility is not only to show what is right and wrong, and they have to show how it is working in the society. Until and unless that is done, it is going to be very difficult thing. So these are the four things in his credo of relevance which he has said. And in the debate to American Political Science Association, he has again said 7 features of post-behavioralism. Earlier he has said 8 features of behavioralism. Now he said 7 features of post-behavioralism. What are those? Already I said techniques are important, but purpose is more important for which techniques is used. Techniques are important, but aim is more important for which techniques are used. The ultimate aim is more important, and this is the reason for which techniques are used. This is the first concept that he has said in his post behavioralism. The second one is the task of political scientists is more challenging. The task of political scientists is more challenging than natural scientists. We have already said. Third one, post behavioralism will not does not reject values. It is not value free, unlike your behavioralism. Rather, it invite values. It is value centric. However, postmodernism suggests that theory should not be biased. Just to incorporate values, but don't be biased. Don't be biased to one section or one community. So include values, but don't be biased. Look at whites and blacks, understand their situation. Don't be biased to blacks or don't be biased to whites. That is what he is saying. Next, he said that theory should have the should have ability to solve the crisis. Whenever there is crisis, theory should be able to solve that crisis. Fifth one is post behavioralism promotes values which contribute to the flourishment of human civilization, which contribute for flourish of human civilization. Right? This is fifth one. Sixth one, political science is applied science and not a pure science. Now, he said that political science is an useful discipline and hence it has to be needed, it has to be supported, and it has to be promoted by research foundations and universities. So in universities there has to be a separate discipline to understand political science, and in order to understand that they have to also study these things. So these are the seven concepts which David Easton has given in his post-behavioralism. Understand that in behavioralism also it is David Easton who said 8 points. Now he is the same person who corrected his behavioralism, and he has saved 7 new points for post-behavioralism. More or less we have discussed all these 7 points. Now you have to understand that apart from the decline of political science, there is also some intellectual influence on post-behavioralism. Intellectual influence. What is that influence, intellectual influence? There are two persons called Karl Popper and Thomas Kuhn. Thomas H-O-N, Kuhn. Now, Karl Popper said that you political scientists should go for critical investigation. Critical investigation means you have to analyze the things and you have to test them on the ground. Analyze and test in real life whether that is real relevance or not. Relevance or not. So, Karl Popper gave a theory known as falsification theory. Concept of falsification. What is this falsification? Whether the theory that you are seeing by the political scientists or anyone, whether that is correct or not, analyze it. How you will analyze it? By critical investigation. By critical investigation, you can come to know whether what you are saying is correct or not. So, Karl Popper gave the theory of falsification. According to falsification, it is saying that if you are going for critical investigation of the subject, then you are going to understand whether the theory that is proposed is correct or not. So, based on Karl Popper's advice, they started coming out with this concept that is called post-behavioralism. And there is Thomas Kuhn. What is Thomas Kuhn? He suggested that there is no final things in knowledge. In knowledge, knowledge is an evolving concept. Hence, there is no such thing called finality. There is no final thing. He said that even scientists works with conceptual frameworks. Even political scientists or any other scientists work with conceptual framework. Conceptual frameworks. Conceptual frameworks, I said it is also known as paradigms with models. Hence they work with conceptual frameworks or paradigms or models. He suggested that the importance of theory is not in how precise it is, but how useful it is in management of crisis. So concepts are facts. He is saying that knowledge is infinite. As a result, don't restrict or don't think that by giving some theories, your work is over. Thomas Kuhn is saying that knowledge is not final. By thinking or by just relying on facts, don't think that your knowledge or your subject is over. He is saying that theory importance lies in not how precise it is. ఎంత చిన్నగుంది థియరీ అని చెప్పడం పైన కాదు. Theory importance lies in how it is helpful in managing the crisis. In order to avoid crisis, how it is helping. Political scientists are giving theories, but what he is saying is, don't worry whether the theory is precise or not, but how far it is helping to manage crisis. For example, look at First World War, it didn't help. Second World War, it didn't help to manage crisis. Civil war in America, it didn't help to manage the crisis. So he is saying that irrespective of your domain, whether you are thinking that you are reducing your subject or whether you are increasing your subject, irrespective of it, you have to manage crisis effectively. To manage crisis effectively, you should always develop new concepts, new frameworks to understand the things. Hence, knowledge is not final. Knowledge is infinite. As a result, subject will be evolving. Keep your stat. Don't keep your subject dead. Right? And in the previous year questions, we have discussed one question. Right? John Clemens clearly said that political science is an not a dead theory, but an orders calling. Orders calling means the same thing that Thomas Kuhn is also saying. Don't think that it is your game is over by just sitting in ivory towers. You have to evolve with the time. It has to be always engaged. So because of this, behavioralism arises. So there is one more person apart from these two. This is called John Clemens. We have already discussed about John Clemens. What John Clemens, this is a previous year question, right? John Clemens said that political science is not a dead theory, but it is something like uh, on orders calling, right? Orders calling, ARDOUS, orders calling. What does this mean? Orders calling means people have to participate in that and people have to evolve the subject over a period of time. So all these scientists, along with David Easton, Robert the Hull, Karl Popper, Thomas Kuhn, John Clemens, gave concept or gave directions to a new domain that is called post-behavioralism in political science. This is how political science has evolved over a period of time. Right? Now, this is how post-behavioralism has evolved. As a result, now the subject started again gaining traction. So these are the theories in political science which are important as far as the subject is considered. This is how political science evolved over a period of time, and this is how it has its own relevance over a period of time. Now quickly, let me go quickly through one concept called how crisis in political theory as a subject has happened. How crisis in political theory as a subject has happened. Now, so hope you understood what is the so-called traditional approaches. So far, what we discussed, traditional approaches to understand political science in before and scientific approaches or modern approaches. Before this, I said what is political theory, what is political science, how they differ, and why this is important. What is the politics, what is state, what is theory, what is philosophy. We discussed those things. In the traditional approach, there are four concepts. One is called philosophical approach, the second one is historical approach, legal institutional approach, fourth one is empirical approach. Empirical approach gave foundations to scientific approach, which is also known as modern approach or contemporary approach. Now, this was classified into two types, particularly behavioralism, post-behavioralism. Right? We have discussed all this. I have also said how to write the answers for all this over a period of time. For those new students, please refer to the earlier classes. We have also discussed how previous year questions are asked in this unit 1 of paper 1, section A. Right? This is the thing. And did you understand where John Clemens has said that word? Political science is not uh, a dead science, but it is an orders calling, right? Why they said? They said in the context of post-behavioralism. Now, what I am going to say is how nature, I am going to quickly rewind how crisis has happened in the subject of political science or political theory. nature of crisis in political theory. Now, political theory has suffered from crisis at many times. One, when it is First World War and Second World War, political science started having its problem, right? I said this already. It started declining after First World War and Second World War. As a result, political theory suffered from crisis of relevance by Second World War, and David Easton and Robert the Hull have famously said that political science is in decline or political science is dead, as per Robert the Hull. Hence, they said or they blamed the so-called traditionalists for the failure of the so-called political theory, right? And then they have come out with the concept of behavioralism. That is how scientific theories were revived. So the first decline was seen in the First World War and Second World War. After the Second World War, political science has really faced crisis. After that, because of scientific approach, it started regaining traction, right? Now again in the Second World War, again in 1960s, as they are focusing only on facts, again the subject started losing relevance. By this point of time, again they quickly revived it by introducing post-behavioralism, 7 concepts of post-behavioralism by David Easton through his credo of relevance concept. And there are not only David Easton who has contributed to this, Robert the Hull has contributed to it, Karl Popper has contributed to it, John Kohlberg has contributed to it, John Clements has contributed to it, right? So this is how political science started declining, crisis was felt. So if they ask a question, crisis in political theory, you have to write this. Crisis in political theory is faced 2 times and how they have overcome by behavioralism and by post-behavioralism, they have given revived the subject. So this is what the crisis of political theory is there. Now, this is how over a period of time uh, behavioralism, post-behavioralism has arisen. This is how they have started working on. And today, if you look at political science, now political science today it is a combination of the so-called vibrant discipline. I said this. Political science today is not just restricted to one thing, or now it is a vibrant discipline which includes more or less